As a candidate, your references are low-hanging fruit. Some organizations hire an outside firm to call references, which might be limited to fact-checking and some very basic questions at a level of detail comparable to an airport security check. Do you have a bomb on your person? No? Good, climb aboard. Acme requires its hiring managers to not only speak to 3 references, managers also conduct somewhat of a mini interview of each reference with you as the topic. Rather than simply asking about Bob and his strengths, they ask something like, "Can you give me an example of Bob's developmental needs and where they may have gotten in his way?" Ooh, that sort of changes things, doesn't it? Now your references are being interviewed about topics that they're not prepared to address. What's going to come out of their mouths? How about a question like, "We really like Bob's sense of humor and the attitude he brings to the position. Can you tell me about your experience?" Reference, "Oh yeah, at the company holiday party, Bob put on some pantyhose, was wearing a lampshade, blah, blah, blah." As a candidate, you can leave things up to chance, or you can determine the outcome with proper planning. And for the record, I never wore that lampshade. I seldom actually speak to people that use me as a reference. I've been used by people that I haven't spoken to since I terminated their employment years ago. Noodle on that one for a moment. I'm surprised how often I get an email telling me that someone I don't know from some organization I'm not familiar with might call me about some job I don't understand to ask me about a person I may have worked with last year or maybe even 5 years ago. Do you speak with your references voice to voice prior to and after each reference check? Do you know what they'll say? Do you solicit feedback from them after they're contacted? As barbaric and primitive as it may sound, actually speak voice to references through an antiquated device called a telephone. In a social networking and texting world, that may be a shocker. Believe it or not, since your interviewer will most likely be speaking to your references, having some knowledge of what that experience feels like might actually help you. Not only is it professional courtesy, it's a great opportunity to provide additional input for your references about the job opportunity, the hiring criteria, and, frankly, what you've been up to for the past few years. Do you let them know whether you got the job and, either way, thank them for their support? Having been used as a reference on countless occasions by colleagues that I consider extremely professional, it's a rare occasion that I'm treated the way I would expect. Long before you need references, reflect upon the pool of possibilities. Like a cover letter and resume that's customized to each organization, all references are not created equal. Having a stable of references doesn't mean that you need to use each one for each situation. Consider who can do the most good and the least bad. For example, you might leverage a respected professor for an application at, say, a university, but choose a fundraising chairperson for a position at a nonprofit. Speak to everyone in your stable of references. This will most always open up a dialogue as to your interest and motivations, giving you the opportunity to describe what positions you're pursuing and what skill sets are required. Ask them what they might say about your shared experience. It's also a good opportunity to refresh their memory and even send a follow-up note summarizing areas that might be significant topics for potential employers, as well as experience to emphasize, given the needs of the job. Once you've established a cache of references, like jewelry, each is there to complement the overall package. While you may have 8 people in your stable of references, it may be that you decide on just 3 for any particular position. Be strategic. Don't forget, references are also a powerful networking tool. Asking someone for a job is a very different thing than asking to be a reference, the latter being a more subtle and professional approach. Assuming your shared experience is positive, don't be surprised if the conversation evolves into her suggesting several people to follow up with. Consider this approach as a deliberate strategy. Nothing prevents you from reaching out to 40 different colleagues, past and present, and ask them to be a reference. Assuming a voice-to-voice conversation, you'll be surprised at how many other networking opportunities open up. While I'd never suggest anything other than genuineness, you can also remind her of the many traits and attributes that you'd like her to stress that she may have long since forgotten.